So our challenge now is that when someone adds in a new to-do item, when they hit the add button here, we've already written the code to make a new to-do item. The question is just how do we pass this back to this view controller and have it update the table view here? And we're going to actually have to do a lot of legwork in order to make this happen. And so what we're going to do essentially is, remember before inside of the joke bank, whenever we moved from here to here, we were able to, pass forward a piece of information. What we're going to do is every time we move forward into create something new, we're going to sort of leave a little trail on the way back to say, hey, we can still update things on the previous view controller over there. So in order to do that, we need to go back to our to-do table view controller, and we're going to add a new function to the bottom here, and it's a function that we've used before. It's the prepare for segue function, right? So this gets called right before a segue happens. And even though we didn't call the segue via code, right? Remember, we just made this connection from the plus button to here, and it just sort of automatically works whenever we hit that plus button, this happens. We still are going to have this function be called whenever that's about to happen. When this prepare for segue gets called, it's going to happen right before we move over to the next view controller. So what we're going to do here is we're going to essentially pass reference of the view controller that we're currently in on to the next one so that we can sort of reach back and be able to edit whatever we need to. So what we're going to do is move to the create to do view controller. So in kind of the sketch here, we're talking about this view controller right here in the middle. We're going to add a new property, and we're going to have this be a variable called to do table VC, which is just my short for view controller. So we're referencing this to do table view controller, and this should be of type to do table view controller optional. And initially, we're just going to set this thing equal to nil. Okay, so we're saying, for right now, there's nothing inside of there, but there could be something inside of there. And by allowing us to have a space here, then we're going to move to our actual to-do table view controller, and first we need to say, okay, whenever we're doing the segue, let's make sure that we're moving to the correct view controller that we think. So we're going to say if let, and the next view controller that we're moving to is the create one, so we'll call this create VC. If let create VC be equal to segue dot destination as question mark, we're saying only move forward if this thing is a create to do view controller. Go ahead and do our curly brackets there. Okay, so we're saying, all right, if we are in fact moving on to a create to do view controller, then create this constant called create VC, and we're just going to simply say create VC, there we go, dot to do, we don't get the autocomplete of this name here, so we've got to do a build. Hit Command B to do a build, and then we can move back to our to-do table view controller. Now when we say to-do table VC, we can just say this thing is equal to, well, and the question is, how do we tell them that the thing that we want to pass in there is actually the class that we're inside of right now, right? Like the type over here is to-do table view controller optional. How do we pass forward this actual to-do table view class? And the way to do it is you just say self. So self is referring to the current object implementation of the class that you're in. And so I know that sounded really, really wordy, but whenever you say self, you're essentially just passing the current class that you're in onto some variable somewhere else, okay? So by doing this here, by saying, okay, create vc.todo table view controller is equal to self, then what we can do over here inside of our create to-do view controllers, after we've made a new to-do, we can actually access the previous view controller, which has, up at the top here, an array called to-dos. So what we're going to do is say, all right, to-dos, to-do table view controller dot to-dos, and we're simply going to add on this new to-do object. So we're going to say, remember how to add things onto an array? You just do a dot append, and we're going to append this new to-do that we just took all this time to create. So I'm going to show you here. If we go ahead and run this app, you think, I've got everything made here. I'm ready to, make this new to-do object. I can add it. So App opens up, I hit the plus button, and I say I'm going to, add a to-do called buy eggs, and this is important, so I'm going to add it, and we go back. What the heck? It doesn't show up on the list. Why is that? Well, just because we add something new to our array here called to-dos doesn't mean that the table view is going to reflect that change, because we've already essentially had these functions here called the number of rows and what goes inside of each of them. So if we change what's inside of here, we have to essentially alert the table view to say we have new information, you should run these functions again. So we have to add one more line of code here where we say to do table view controller dot and we want to get to its table view. So to do table view controller dot table view dot reload data. Okay, so this tells the table view, hey, you should, recheck for new information. And now with this in place, we'll go ahead, build succeeded. Okay, app opens up, we hit the plus button. Let's add our buy eggs item here. I hit the add button, then I move back. Whoa, check that out. We get buy eggs showing up there at the bottom. How cool is that? That's really sweet. That's awesome. Now, one thing that I want to talk about here is that anytime we add something new, like I'll just do hey there, and we hit the add button, it'd be nice as soon as the user hits that button that we automatically pop them back to this view controller so that they can, say, oh, okay, that all happened there. And the way to make this happen is we're just going to go down here on a new line of code. We're going to tell the navigation controller that we want to move back one. So first we have to get access to our navigation controller. We're going to say navigation controller, and then we're going to do a dot on this. And there's two different things that you can do with this navigation controller. So one of them is that you can push, which means add a new view controller, and one of them is pop. And in our case, we just want to pop. So we're going to say navigation controller dot pop view controller. It takes in one parameter. It just asks, do you want this to be animated? I almost always put true inside of here because it makes your app look very smooth. If you put false, you can go ahead and try this if you want, but it's just going to make it look really choppy. So anyways, this line of code here basically says it's the equivalent of hitting the back button. Whenever you pop a view controller that's inside of a navigation controller, it's just saying, oh, psh, hit the back button. Just go back to the previous view controller that you're in. Okay? So let's go ahead and test this out. All right, build succeeds. And app opens up here. I hit the plus button. I'm going to say do my buy eggs. Let's make it important this time. I hit the add button. Boom, look, it pops us back, and all of a sudden it added it on to the end there. Okay, so we are doing really, really well. We have, all this code to be able to add new things. And if we go ahead and look at this, these two view controllers are completely done. Really, it's just this last view controller that we got in place to where when we tap on one of these, we can figure out which one it is and then, decide whether or not we want to complete that and have it deleted from there. So let's go ahead and talk about that in the next one.